So last night I watched the documentary 4 Hours at the Capitol. If you've not saw it, I highly recommend it. It's on Max. I hadn't got around to watching it, but I finally did. And as I sat there watching it, I was every bit as pissed off watching that as I was the day it happened. But as I was watching it, I realized, you know what? No matter which side of the political aisle you fall on, or no matter how you view January 6th, January 6th will forever be a great stain on American history. It will be something that we're talking about for years to come. Our grandchildren will be talking about it. For those of us that were alive and watched it unfold on that day, we will always be talking about it. And for generations born years later, they will grow up and they will hear us talk about it. And they will watch documentaries and they'll read books and they'll listen to people tell the stories. They'll try to form their own opinions. But at the end of the day, this is a day that's going to live in infamy forever. It's a day we're always going to be talking about. And we've been talking about it even more here lately because they've been releasing never-before-seen footage. And politicians, MAGA politicians, I should say, are going out of their way to try to glorify these people and make them into heroes and paint the picture that this was a peaceful protest and nothing bad happened and these people were enticed into doing these things and they were gave a guided tour and it was just all peaceful. They were all just singing and happy that day. But can we just cut right through all the bullshit and just start at the beginning? Let's start at the beginning and ask ourselves, why were they there on that day? And can we all be honest just for 1 minute? I'll be honest with you guys. I didn't know that January 6th was the day that they certified the election results. How many of you honestly didn't know that before January 6th, 2021? I'll be honest, I didn't. Because any other time in American history when we had an election, the winner was announced. The winner would come out and make a victory speech. The loser would concede and they would move forward. And nobody ever sat and thought about, well, what's going to happen on January 6th? It was never an event. It was never a day that I ever remember us talking about prior to 2021. And the reason they were gathered there on that day is because Donald Trump continued to push the lie that the election was stolen. He had no evidence for it. His own people who he hired told him he didn't have the evidence. His own people who he hired said there was not enough fraud here to sway it one way or the other. There was no fraud. There's nothing you could do. You just lost. If he could have just been man enough to accept defeat and walk out there and concede, none of it would have ever happened if he'd have just owned up to it. But he couldn't bring himself to do that. He sat there and he pushed the lie until he got them to show up. And now for everybody out there that says, oh, well, it was peaceful. Peaceful or not peaceful, can we just talk for a minute about how it looked? Can we just talk about the fact that these people gather and there's flags everywhere and they're obviously very confused as to which flag they're supposed to be flying? I saw an American flag or two, but there was mostly Trump flags and there was flags with his face on them. And there was Don't Tread on Me flags, and there was Confederate flags. There was flags flying everywhere. So no matter how you slice it, it definitely looked like a cult that showed up to see their leader. It looked like a rock concert. It looked like that they had come to see him. It didn't necessarily look like they were there for American ideas or that it was about America. From the outside looking in, it sure as hell looked like they were gathered there to support Trump, by God. And they're sitting there screaming and cussing and, fuck you, Pelosi, and fuck you. We're going to get it back. We're going to take it back and fuck all of you. Now, they're standing there saying all these things. And you got a guy up there saying to them, you're not going to have a country again if you don't fight like hell. If you say those words to people that you've lied to and manipulated and they're worked up in that mind frame and they're there to see you and you sit there and you tell them that, of course they're going to get worked up and try to fight like hell. There are rock stars out there that can manipulate their audience into lighting a place on fire. There's people out there that have that type of cult of personality, that have that type of control over people. And no matter how you slice it, before we even get to what happened, before we even get to the actual insurrection, when the shit hit the fan, before you even get to that, if all it was just a gathering of those people, you got to admit it still looked pretty fucking weird. You got to admit that they were fangirling out over one guy. And that, to me, in itself, is disturbing enough despite what happened next. But for all the ones that says, well, if you look at this camera, watch them let them through this door, there is footage from every angle of them busting doors and kicking doors down and busting windows and shouting, and they're hollering back at one another, we need more people, push, come forward, move. The cops were so badly outnumbered that the only thing they could do was just fight for their lives. And it's so sickening watching this back the blue crowd that's all about respecting law enforcement. And I know it's going to come at me in the comment section talking about the protest of 2020. But it's like you guys definitely on that day did not practice what you preached. On that day, you went up there and you could say all day long that it was peaceful and that it was fun and y'all was just singing Toby Keith songs or whatever the fuck you was doing. But when you look at the footage and you see people sitting there screaming and cussing and pumping their fist in a fit of rage because they bought into a lie, then what do you expect? And I can't remember the cop's name, but he was the guy that they dragged him. They dragged him out. And the only thing he could think of, he heard them saying, get his weapon, kill him with his own weapon. He heard them say that. And the only thing he could think of in that moment to save himself was to just scream, I've got kids, hoping that somebody would hear him. And luckily, somebody did. That one moment, that one moment should be enough for people to say, yeah, this here bit done got out of hand. The most sickening part to me of the documentary, that was definitely in the top 5, probably the most sickening moment. Another sickening moment to me was when they showed all the congressmen and women that were fearing for their lives, and then they flash over and show Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she's just smiling away. She's just as happy as she could be about it. That turned my stomach. And what turns my stomach is that they're still sitting here calling these people patriots. They're still sitting here trying to make excuses for them and telling me to just look at it from a different angle. Well, go watch 4 hours at the Capitol. You can come at me with all the footage you want to of different angles, or what was happening down the road, or what was happening on the other side of the building. But go watch them bust out the windows. Go watch them kick the doors down. Go watch them say, push harder, we need more manpower, we got to get in. And they're walking through screaming like wild animals that they're because they were so caught up in a cult of personality. They got so worked up. And they've been sitting back for 4 years getting worked up. And they're inspired and they're ready to go vote. So to everybody out there who's pissed off at Joe Biden about this or that, I would ask you a favor. Wait right till you go vote in 2024. And right before you leave the house to go vote, just watch 4 hours at the Capitol one more time. And say to yourself, do I want to hand my democracy back over to this cult of personality and to this lunacy?